covering in today's class. We're just going to learn how to create and import files in that Google Docs platform. We'll look at how to edit and format text and other elements. We'll explore some of the tips and tricks for working with those files that you have in your Google account. We'll talk briefly about printing and downloading your files, and we'll also touch on collaborating and sharing documents with other users. I'll be accessing everything that we need today from my Google account. As we work, keep in mind that documents created in Google will save automatically in the cloud while we're working, so we don't have to worry about hitting save. Any documents that you do create in Google will also be accessible from any device with internet access in the future. So let's go ahead and get started with our Google Docs. And I'm going to start by signing in from the Google Docs homepage, which is just docs.google.com. And as I sign in there, you can see what that interface looks like. And the Docs interface is going to be specific just to creating those text documents. If I wanted to create a new document from here, all I need to do is select that tile that says blank in the top left corner, and it opens up the blank document screen for me. I also have the option to do the same thing from Google Drive. So if you're more comfortable with Google Drive, you can sign in that way as well at drive.google.com. The difference being, we would need to choose that we want Google Docs from our new options. So we would go ahead and click new in that left corner. We'd scroll over to Google Docs and then use that little arrow over to choose either blank document or from a template. When I selected blank document, I would open up a blank document in a separate tab. Blank documents are great if you want to go ahead and do all of your own text formatting and information without having anything set up in advance. However, you may also find that templates are useful for you, which is basically a way for you to get some pre-existing formatting and information available as you create your document. So let me pop back over to the Google Docs homepage. Right where I selected new, I also have the option for the template gallery, and you can see some of the options across the top here. If I wanted to see more, I can click on those little arrows to expand the template gallery. And that shows me the different documents that are available. And I can scroll through and choose from the different categories. So things like resumes, letters, personal documents, work files like project proposals. And once I found something that I was interested in, I would just double click to select that template, and it would open up for me. And what that's going to give me is some of my fonts, my colors, my spacing and things laid out. And I can go into this document and just replace with my own text. You can do the same thing from your Google Drive account as well. So from Google Drive, you would go under new, go down to Docs, and again, use that little arrow over. Instead of doing blank document, you'd choose from a template, and that's going to take you right back to that template gallery that we were just in with Google Docs. Now, one last thing that I want to touch on is if you have an existing file like a Microsoft Word document or a PDF, you can also import and convert that file into Google Docs and edit that way as well. Now, do keep in mind, if you choose to do this, converting your file may cause some loss of formatting or other changes. We can't guarantee that it will be 100% accurate to what your Word document looks like as a Google Doc. If you wanted to upload your own file, and you would go under New, and you would just choose File Upload. And that will let you navigate to the place on your device where you have that file stored. And here in my Google Drive, I've gone ahead and put in a Word document to give you an example of what that's going to look like. And instead of being a Google file, you'll see it has that little W for Microsoft Word. Now, if I right click, I have the option to open with, and I can choose to open that file with Google Docs. From here, I can edit that file just like normal if it was a Word document, and I can keep it as a Microsoft Word format, or I can choose to convert it to Google Docs by doing a file save as Google Docs, and that will convert the file for me. Now, one thing you'll notice when you go back to your Google Drive homepage is that you will have both of those files. Let me go ahead and refresh that page so that we can see. Now I've got my original Word file, but I also have that Google Docs file as well. The only difference in working with a PDF file is you won't have the option to edit unless you convert to a Google Docs file. The next thing we're going to talk about is just a little bit of information on how to access the files that you do have in your Google account. And how your files are organized are going to look different if you're using Google Docs or if you're using Google Drive. So I'll go back over to Google Docs for a minute, close out of my template gallery so that we can see Google Docs will only pull up those documents. You won't see images, you won't see slides, you won't see spreadsheets, only those files that you've created in Google Docs or that can be converted into a Google Doc. And within your organization, you have the option to display them here as grid view or list view, which is what this tiny little bulleted list icon does. If I switch that by clicking on it, that changes to a list. So I can see all of my files as a list. If I switch it back by clicking on the little grid, then I see the little previews of the different files that I have. Within those files, I can sort them by their title, by the last time I opened them, by the last time I modified them, whichever makes the most sense. And I can also filter them so I can look for only files that are owned by me or by files owned by anyone, or even just the files that have been shared with me. Once I've found what I want, I can just double click on that file to open it. If for some reason I didn't see the file that I was looking for, I can also use that search box at the top of the page to search by the name or the text to find it. Google Drive is going to work very similarly, except that you'll have a few more options because you can have more file types. Within Google Drive, you do have the option to create folders as a way to group your files, and those folders will display on top, followed by your individual files underneath. Once again, you can sort your documents and files by name or by those modified or opened dates. You just click on where it says name to change that option. And then you can also sort either ascending or descending, depending on what makes the most sense to you. You may also see at the top of your Google Drive homepage some suggested files. Those are going to change every time that you sign in. That's going to be based on things that you open often, things that you've interacted with recently, so that they're quick to come back to. If you want to see documents that you've accessed recently as well, you can also click on the recent menu on the left-hand side to see based on the date that you opened them. Or if you wanted to mark a file as important that you wanted to keep it, you can mark it as starred. You would just right click on that document, click add to starred. And then when you chose starred on your left-hand menu, you would see those files prioritized over there for you. Again, folders are going to show up ahead of files every time in Google Drive. And just like in Google Docs, we also have that search bar at the top. If we can't find what we're looking for, then we can search by the title or text to see if we can locate our document. The biggest difference is we'll have some more search filters, like limiting just to documents or PDFs, because I can have more file types in Google Drives. All right, before we move on to actually navigating the Google Docs platform and interacting with our document, do we have any questions about creating, importing, or accessing your files?
There are no questions in the chat at this time, Jeannie.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so let's go ahead and open up a blank Google Doc so we can talk about navigating in our platform. When I open a new document, I should see a blank document screen. My cursor is this blinking vertical line right here that's going to show in the upper left-hand corner of the page, and that's going to show me where the content will appear on the page when I start typing. That cursor is going to move to the right as I type, and Google Docs is automatically going to wrap the text to the next line as I keep typing. When I'm ready to start a new paragraph, I would just go ahead and click enter. Now over here in the top left corner of my screen, I'm going to see options for things like renaming my file, adding it to my starred documents, or checking my sync status. So first thing I'm going to do is click in the box where it says untitled document. And that is where I can rename my document. And I'm just going to call it class document today. And that gives my document a title that I can easily find. I can change that at any time by just clicking back into that box. Right next to that is my little star icon. That would add it to my prioritized files in Google Drive. Next to that, I have a little folder icon that I can use to move this document into a folder. If I click on that, I would see all of the folders that I have available. I could choose where I want to move it. Once I've clicked on that, I would just click move, and that would file my document into the folder that I need. And then finally, as you work, you should see a little cloud icon that shows your document sync status. As long as you see a little check mark in that cloud, that means that your document's changes have been saved. As you start working, you'll also notice that you'll see a date and time that shows when the last edits were made. Now, underneath that is what is called the menu toolbar, and that's where we find menus for working within the document. To see the specific commands and options available, I would just choose one of the categories, click on it, and expand that list. So my file menu is going to include things like emailing or downloading the document. Edit menu will have things like copying, pasting, undoing. Our view menu will let us work with how that document appears on the screen while we're typing. Our insert menu will include commands for adding additional things into our document. Format will cover most of the things like our paragraphs, columns, adding page numbers. Tools will include things like spelling and grammar checks or the word count of our document. And then you also have your add-ons menu if you had additional add-ons installed to your account. We will not be covering that in today's class, but it is an option available to you. And then finally, you have that help option, which lets you pull up Google's help information if you run into trouble. Underneath all of that, you'll see a bunch of little icons, and those are part of our shortcuts toolbar. And what the shortcuts toolbar does is it brings together buttons for commonly used features that you can use instead of going to the menu for that. So for example, we have a little printer, that's our print icon. I can click that to get to my print options instead of going through file and choosing print. So now that we know a little bit more about navigating our platform, let's start working with our text. So to add text into the document, all I'm going to do is just click on the page and start typing. Now remember, Docs is going to save periodically as I work, so I don't have to worry about hitting save at any point. If I was working in a template, this would be where I would just highlight and replace that existing text with my own. So I'm going to put a sample sentence in. And you'll see the cursor moves along as I'm typing. And this just lets me put in text and information that I might need for my document. Now that I have some text in here, we can look at some of the options for customizing that text. So for example, I might want to change the font or color of my text or add highlighting to it. And I can do that pretty easily. To change the font, I would just highlight the word that I want to change. And I would go up to my shortcuts menu, and here where it says Arial, I can choose whatever font that I might want to use. And I can scroll through those options and see, and that'll change the font. The same way with the color, I would highlight the text that I want to change the color of, and up in the shortcuts toolbar, I've got a little icon of the letter A with a colored line underneath it. And right now that colored line is black. If I click on that and choose a different color, say I'm going to make this text blue, you'll see that my document text changed blue here, but also now I know my text color is set as blue, which just means if I pick another word and just hit that, I can go ahead and do that again, blue, and I can see that that is different. And if I click in a different word, see that goes back to black. Highlighting is another option that we have if we want to just emphasize that text. I can highlight it right next to that little A for text color. I've got my highlight color. I can choose that from my menu and add that highlighter just as if I had highlighted on paper. You also have the option to change how your text looks by applying different formatting like bold, italics, or underlined. So if I just put another line in just to make this a little bit easier to see. These are things that I can do from that shortcuts toolbar as well. Highlight the text, click on that B for bold, that will bold the text. If I wanted to italicize, I'd use that italic I, or if I wanted to underline, highlight the text and use that U with the line underneath it for underlined. Bold, italics, and underline are also things that you can do with your keyboard shortcuts if you prefer. So you could use the keyboard shortcut Control+B for bold, Control+I for your italics, or Control+U for underlining if that is more comfortable for you. You might also want to change the size of your text to make it bigger. So let's say I want something to stand out. I would just highlight the text that I want to change the size to, and up here where I have a number, that's going to be my font size. And I can either use the arrows next to it to make that font bigger, or if I know I want it to be a certain size, I can also type that size directly into the box as well. You also have the option to go under the format menu, choose text, and do things like bold, italics, underline, or increase or decrease your font size. Styles are a little bit different. So let's say that I have typed another line of text and I want to make it look a little bit different. When I highlight that, I'm going to go over to this box that says normal text, And I'm going to see that I have options. So I could make this into a title, a subtitle, a heading, or use some of the other options. When I click on that, it's going to change the formatting for me. If I decide I don't like that, I can click back in that box and it will change the text to that. And that's useful if you're doing something where you need to break up different parts of text, like say you're working on a program proposal for your job and you need to have a title and you really want that to stand out. You can apply that title format and then go back to your main body text. Again, this is something that you can get to from the menu. You would just go up to Format and then look at Paragraph Styles, and you can see that whole list of styles listed there for you as well. Now, sometimes when you're working in your document, you may find that you want to repeat the same text, but you don't want to have to type it over and over again. This is where the copy and paste commands can easily duplicate content in your document. So let's say I just want to use this line of formatting my text and I want to be able to put it over again. I can highlight that text and then I have several different options to copy and paste it. If you're most comfortable using the menu, you would be going under your edit menu and selecting copy. Then when you knew where in the document you wanted to put it, say I want to put it on this line in between, I would go back to edit and paste that document in. If you prefer to do from a right click, you can highlight your text, right click, and then you can choose copy. Click where in the document you want to paste that text in, right click again, and choose paste. And then finally, if you prefer keyboard shortcuts, once again, highlight, you'll do Control C, click where you want to put your text, Control V, that will move that text in for you. Now let's say that I want to move my text around, but I don't want to duplicate it. This is where a cut and paste may be a good option for you. This time I would be highlighting the text and I'd choose cut. And again, I can do that from the edit menu, I can do that from a right click, or I can do that from a keyboard shortcut. And this time, I'm just going to go ahead and use my keyboard shortcut, right click and cut, and you'll see that it pulls that text out of the document altogether. I can go to wherever in the document I want it to be, right click again, click paste, and that just moves the document. So if I'm working on, say, my resume, and I realize that I've got my jobs out of order, I can cut and paste that information to get it back in the correct order. Now you do have an option to copy or cut and paste without doing the formatting. So let's say that I want to copy this line, but I don't want it to be as big when I do it. When I do copy, when I do my paste, I have the option to paste without formatting, and that would let it paste without having some of those added elements, which let's go ahead and do it with this line up here that has some extra stuff in here. It's being cranky for me and doesn't want to do what I want. But the paste without formatting should keep your original formatting instead of the extra add-ins. And you also have a keyboard shortcut that you can use to do that as well. Now let's say we're going along nicely, except for we messed up something and we want to undo it. We can use our undo and redo actions to be able to do that. I can use the edit menu to do undo and redo, but I also have those little buttons right here on my shortcuts toolbar. I can click undo as many times as I need to here, and those actions go away. Say I didn't mean to do that. I can click the opposite arrow to redo and redo that action over again. And that just gives me some short ways to back up a little bit and make corrections without having to redo all of my work. Another option for formatting your blocks of text is to create bulleted or numbered lists. Now you have two different options for doing this. You can either set up your formatting before you start typing your list, or you can format lines of text that you've already typed. So let's say that I want to make a list starting up front. I could do this from the format menu. I would go down to bullets and numbering and choose the type of list that I wanted to create. Or I can do this from my shortcuts toolbar and either pick that I want a checklist, a bulleted list, or a numbered list. And I'm just going to go ahead and click bullets just to put a few things into the list. And you'll see that it adds in that formatting for me. Now, if I had text up here that I wanted to go ahead and make into a bulleted list, I would just highlight and then use that shortcut to apply those changes. Now, once you've created a bulleted list, you can also change how that list appears. So what we would do is actually right-click up here on our bullet and then make the changes. So if I go under more bullets, I can see different images or symbols that I can use. I can select those and apply them. If I want to change the font color, I can do that as well. Say I want to make them kind of a pinky purple. As long as they're highlighted, I can make those changes. And I can also use the font size to make them larger or smaller. So say I want them to be extra large, I can change that number in there as well. Doing a numbered list is going to be exactly the same process, except we're going to choose the number icon instead of our bullets icon. And this time I'm just going to type my list first. Would highlight and choose numbers, and that will add in my numbered list. If I don't like the default list, I can also use that little arrow next to it to choose from other options. And with numbers, you're going to notice this the most as you start having levels underneath that 1, 2, 3. If you have kind of subpoints in there, you might want to choose a different style based on what makes sense to you. Your bulletin list is going to be the same way. You'll see those changes as you add those extra levels in. Do we have any questions about formatting just our basic text before we move on?
No questions right now.
All right, let's move on to formatting our paragraphs. So these are going to include options like our line spacing, our space between paragraphs, how our text appears on the page with our alignment, or the indentation that we use. So let's start with the first one, which is going to be our line and paragraph spacing. And that refers to how much space there is between the individual lines of text and the separate paragraphs in the document. So I would highlight the text that I want to make those changes to. And then I have a couple of options. I can use the line and paragraph spacing button here on the shortcuts toolbar, or I can go up to the menu and I would go under format and choose line and paragraph spacing. So say I'm writing a paper and I need it to be double spaced. I can click on double and it will put those spaces in for me. Now my alignment is going to refer to how that text appears on the page. To the right of the page, to the left of the page, or centered in the middle of the page. Again, you're going to highlight the text that you want to make those edits to, and then you're going to choose the option that you want. So from the format menu, that would be under our align and indent options, Or from the shortcuts toolbar, we can use little picture icons to choose left, center, right, or justified alignment. So we'll just do center as an example. You'll see it'll move all of the text over for me. Now my indentation options are going to refer to how my text looks as compared with that margin on the side. So let's say I want to add an indent into these two lines here. I would go ahead and highlight the text that I want to edit. I'm going to go under Format and choose my Align and Indent, and that's my increase or decrease indent or my indentation options. If I increased the indent, you'll see that text moves over a little bit. I also have those two increase, decrease buttons up here on my shortcuts toolbar that I can move that text over as well. If you wanted more advanced options like a hanging indent that you might need if you were doing a bibliography, that's where you want to go under your menu and look at your indentation options to pop up that separate window, and you can choose a first line or hanging indent there, or put in the inches that you would like to use for your indentation as well. Another option for working with your text is that you may want to just clear the formatting options quickly from the toolbar or the menu. You've done some work, you don't like it, you don't want to go all the way through all that undoing and trying to figure out where you are. You could just highlight the text, choose Format, and then do Clear Formatting. And that puts your text right back to that default. You can also use that little kind of T with a line through it on the shortcuts toolbar to do the exact same thing. And that's just a way to reset your document back to kind of the beginning without losing all of the text that you've typed. Another way to arrange your text is by creating columns. So when you have your text highlighted, you would go under your format menu, choose columns, and then you can choose the options that you need. So default options here, I have one column, I can do two, I can do three. If I go under more options, I can choose that number and also the space, and I can choose whether or not to put a line in between my columns. So let's say I want it to be 2 columns, but I want to have that line in between it. Once I hit apply, you'll see now I have 2 columns of text and that line in between them. Now, once I've created a document and I need to do some basic editing, I can use tools like Find and Replace or spelling and grammar checks to do some of that cleanup work. So if I go under Edit, at the very bottom of that list, I have Find and Replace. I can also bring up the Find and Replace menu with the keyboard shortcut Control+H if I prefer. But what I would be doing is looking for the text that I want to change. So let's say I'm looking for the word class, and I actually want to change that to lecture. I can put in the text that I want to replace, then I would hit next. It's going to highlight in the document for me, and I can choose to make that replacement. Now I don't have any more matches, so it's not going to make any more changes for me. If I had a word that appeared more often, you'll see it'll highlight that I have 3 different times that word shows up. I can replace them individually, or I could do replace all to make the changes to every time that word shows up. So if you have like a name that you need to switch out, you can easily find all of the occurrences of that name and make that change at once. If you are just wanting to find where something is, you can also skip putting in that replace with and go through by hitting next to see where those words show up in your document as well. I can use the spelling and grammar tool to check my document for common errors. And I would do that by either clicking on that little A with the check mark to open up spelling and grammar check, or under tools, I can do spelling and grammar and choose what options that I want to have. Now I can choose to have spelling suggestions show up as I type and grammar suggestions show up as well, or I can build a personal dictionary. And right now you'll see I've got a blue squiggly line underneath this line of text, and that lets me know that I have a grammar suggestion. And when I right click, it gives me some options. I can either ignore it or I can accept the changes. If I had a word that I was typing in that I misspelled, you'll see it come up with a red squiggly underline. I can right click, I can either make the change, I can ignore it, I can have it set to always correct if I spell it that way, or I can add it into my dictionary. And that lets me do just some of that basic editing to make sure that my document is clean before I send it off. Now, depending on the type of document that I'm creating, I might also want to add additional elements beyond the text that we've been working with. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit to where we have some space at the bottom of our document, and we're going to look at adding some elements. Now, for most of these, you're going to go through the insert menu, although images do have the option of going through that little picture frame with the mountains to go through the shortcuts toolbar. But I would go under insert. So let's say I want to add a picture in. I could choose to upload it from my computer. I could search for it on the web, or if I have something saved in my computer in my Google Drive, I can also pull it up as well. Let's say I want to put a city of Plano picture in. I can search, click on the image that I want. Once I've clicked on it, I'll see that it has one selected. I would choose insert, and that will put the picture into my document. And then when I click on that image, I have the additional formatting options like wrapping the text around it, resizing, or otherwise working with it. Now let's say that I want to put a table with some different text in. I would go under insert table, and then I'm going to draw a little preview of my table. So I'm going to choose how many rows and columns that I need, and that will put the table into the document for me. When I'm ready to start putting in text, I would just click into that cell and go ahead and start typing that content in. If I wanted to insert a chart into my document, I would go up under insert and then choose chart. And then I'm going to choose the type of chart that I wanted to insert. Now this is going to be a little bit trickier because I do have to edit that chart in Google Sheets. So let's say I want a bar chart. I'm going to start putting it in. I can't make the changes to this chart here in my document. I actually have to click where that little paperclip is and open up the source to make the changes to the information that appears. So let's say I just want to change my team names real quick. Once I've made those changes, I can go ahead and close that. And that will let the changes show up in my Google Doc. Now, if it doesn't show up automatically, I can click on that button that says update to show the changes that I made. You also have the option to insert various elements that make your document easier to navigate, like page numbers, headers and footers, or even page and section breaks. If I wanted to put page numbers into my document, I would go under Insert, and then I would choose Page Numbers. And I can see a couple of different places that I can put them in, or if I want to do a page count. So let's say I just want them to be in the bottom corner. I can click on that, and I've got my page numbers showing now. If I wanted to do a header or footer with additional information, I could go under Insert. I can do header or footer. So let's say I want to go ahead and put a header into my document. I could put that in and apply it. When I click out of that, that header will appear on different pages for me, just like those page numbers are showing up as well. I can format that text just the same as any other text. When I'm in the header, I have all of those options to change the font, change the formatting, change the color so that it appears in my document that way as well. Section breaks can help format your document into various parts, and then page breaks are used to insert new pages into your document. You can also use column breaks to split up your columns on natural text divisions if you would like. And all of those are going to be done from the insert menu as well. You would go up to Insert and then choose break and the type of break that you needed to include. So let's just say I want to put a page break in. I'll choose page break, and that will add it in for me. If I was doing a column break, I would need to be in the text that actually has columns. Let's say I want this to be the start of my next column. I can go under Insert and then do column break, and it will move that text so it starts the second column there for me. Are there any questions about editing or adding elements?
Looks like no questions at this time.
All right, we're going to briefly talk about some page layout options, and then we will go into printing, downloading, and sharing our files. Now, page layout is where we would make options for our overall document when it gets ready to print, like our orientation, our margins, our paper size, or our page color. I would go under File, Page Setup, and then I can see if I want to apply it to the whole document, to a particular section, etc. And here is where I can put in my margins. I can change my paper size, or if I want my document to be colored, I can even apply a page color, make those changes, click OK, and they are made to my document. Now let's say I've done all of the work that I need to, and I am ready to print and download. Since Google Docs does save as I work, I'm always going to have access to my most current copy when I access my files online. But I might need to download, print, or email that document. So to do that, I can go File and choose Print. And that will open up my print options and a preview. I should be able to see my printers. I can choose what pages I need to print, how many copies, if I want to color black and white, and my other print settings. When everything looks good, I would hit Print. Now let's say that I want to download that document instead of printing. Again, I would go under File, I would go under Download, and then I would choose the format that I need to download in. Generally, if you're working in Google Docs, you're either going to do a Microsoft Word document or a PDF document. And then finally, to email, I would choose file, then email, and email this file. And that's going to pop up my email options. I put who I'm emailing it to, my subject, which will default to that document title, and any message that I need to include. And then I'm also going to choose the file type if I want to send it as a Word document, as a PDF document. And once I've done all of that, I can also choose to send myself a copy. And then that send button will be available for me. But let's say that I want to share the document that I'm working on, but give people the option to collaborate on it. That's where Google sharing features come in handy. And in the top right-hand corner of my screen, I've got a blue share button. And when I click on that, it will bring up my sharing options. And I can choose how to share that document. I can do it by email, by typing different emails into that, or I can do it by getting a link. Now, the biggest thing is going to be deciding my permissions. So let's say that I want to share it with someone. Once I've put that name in, I'm going to see viewer, commenter, or editor as my choices. If I give someone viewing access, that means they can see my document, but they can't make any changes. If I give them commenting access, they can add comments into my document, but they can't make any edits. Or if I give them editor access, they can make full changes to my document. I can add that message if I need to, and then click send. If I'm doing a link, I have the choice between a restricted link, which means only people I've added can open that link, or I can choose to give that access to anyone who has the link. And I can access additional options if I need it from that little gear shift icon if I needed to change anything there. Now, if I don't want to use that sharing button, I can also do file and get to sharing options that way as well, just by doing file and share. Now, the last thing I want to point out is over in that right-hand corner, you do have different modes when you're working in Google Docs, and that's going to be unique to the Google Docs platform. You won't see that in some of the other Google products. If you are in editing mode, that means you're making your edits directly into the document. If you change this to suggesting mode, it's basically giving somebody an idea of the changes that you want to make, but they have the option to accept or reject those changes. So I could say, I'm going to highlight and delete that sentence. You'll see that sentence still shows up in my document as an option to make those changes. And then I would have the option to either accept the suggestion or reject it. So if I liked it, I would click accept, and those edits would then be made. If I was using viewing mode, this is how I would look at the document, be able to see it, but I'm not actually able to type or make changes. So I can't accidentally delete something in there. Nothing happens if I highlight and delete. And that's just another way for you to work within your document and have those options. Now, Google does have the option for simultaneous editing, which just means that if I have multiple people making changes in the document, I'm going to see it as it happens. So my changes will show up, other people will show up, and you'll see them pop up across the top in little icons that show you who's in the document, and they will show up as different colors of cursors as they're working as well. Another option that you have is just to go into a document and make comments, which you can do through your comment history. And that is the little speech bubble icon there. So let's say I want to make a comment. Here I can see all of my comments that have been made, or use that plus sign to make a comment. And once I comment, people can see those It can provide additional context. And then you have the option to either mark the comment as resolved once you've taken a look at it. You can delete the thread, or you can even go in and reply to the comment and let multiple people have part of that conversation. And you'll see everyone with their names and their comments in there. Those comments will always display along the right-hand side of your document, and they can be downloaded as part of an edited document. So if you're downloading in a Microsoft Word format, you can keep those comments. But if you download a PDF, you will not keep that information in when it downloads. Do we have any last questions before we wrap up today?
Nope, no questions. Thank you, Jamie.
Not a problem. That is going to conclude the information for today's class. But before we go, I'm going to share just a couple of additional library resources with you. If you do have a short question that you'd like library staff to answer, you can submit that online at any time using our Ask a Librarian service. And a librarian will usually respond within 48 hours with the information that you need. If you would like more one-on-one help from one of our librarians, generally about 30 minutes of time, with the chance to go over your specific questions, you can also complete a Book a Librarian appointment request. And each session will be tailored to your specific needs and is compatible with your schedule. And you can find links to both of those on our website, planolibrary.org. We also have our blog, Plano Librarian Learns, which includes book lists, program recordings, and other useful information. And you can explore more business and career resources and technology tools from the associated tabs on the blog. You can also view some of our past programs on our YouTube channel as well. Now, remember, you will receive a link to the recording from today's class in a few days. And you can access our course handouts via the Google Drive at any time as well. And if you would like to learn more about the Google suite of programs, please do keep an eye out for a series of programs in January that will cover not only Docs, but also some of the other programs like Sheets, Slides, Forms, and even Google Drive. As you leave the program today, please do take a moment to complete our program survey, which should pop up when you exit the program. We do value your feedback, and we use that to help improve our programs and the programs that we offer. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your day.